This is going to be a little how-to video on how to desolder or remove solder from a circuit board. So if you need to remove a part off of a board, how to do it. And this is there's a lot of variables that go into knowing how to desolder and what techniques to use, because different components on a board are soldered on different ways. And there's surface mount components that are soldered on the top side. There's double layer boards that have solder on a part that's on both the top side and the bottom side and the back side of the board. Those can be kind of a pain to do. And then there's some that have just a standard board, circuit board, have stuff that is soldered on just the back side of a board. And that's the kind of board we're going to be looking at. I'm not going to do anything with the surface mount crap. I'm going to deal with just like the old school, like through hole design stuff with just like single through hole component, like resistors, diodes that just shoved through a board and soldered on the back side like this. Now, the key thing when desoldering is what to use to pull the solder off. And there's all kinds of stuff out there. And this is the stuff, and we've been working on circuit board, rebuilding things for people. Mostly we work on electric fence equipment. There's a little information about us if you're ever kind of curious who we are. There are links in the description below. But the key things to have good, decent quality equipment and things to solder and desolder with. Now the desoldering method that we're going to do is we're going to use some desolder braid or solder wick, whatever you want to call this. This stuff here is made by Chemwick. That's what we buy. And this is like a we buy it on Amazon. I'll put a link down below where you can find it. It's not an affiliation link. We don't have stuff like that, so you buy it. We don't get any kind of kickback from it. But this is a 50-foot roll. It's like $20. I don't remember. We go through about one roll. There's two of us working here, me and my dad, working on things. We go through about one roll a piece, but every 6 months to a year, depending on how much work we got going on. But the 50-foot roll, the reason why I like this stuff, it's got like flux rosin stuff built into the wick, so it really helps the transfer of heat between your iron and this stuff to allow the allow this to suck the solder right off the board. Now there's another tool, it's called a solder sucker. That's what we always called it. And it's like a little manual, little pump. You have a big spring, you push it in, you compress it, it locks it up, it gets a little air pressure built up. You put the iron on there, you push a little button, it sucks the solder right up. I don't mind those. They're like $6, $7, $8 on Amazon. You know, they're okay. Sometimes it takes like 3, 4, 5 tries to get the solder off the board, off of a joint, depending on what you want to do. There's cheaper options than this particular one. You can get like a small roll that's like $8, but some of that stuff that's real cheap, it's a lot shorter rolls, like a 5 or 6 foot roll, which you may only need that much, but a lot of them don't have that rosin flux built into it, and it's a pain in the neck to get that solder, to get this to pull the solder off, because it doesn't transfer the heat as well as this stuff does. I love this stuff. We've been using this stuff off and on for 20 years. And I love this particular brand of stuff. We're not sponsored by them or anything. We probably bought in 50 rolls or more of this stuff for the last number of years of using this stuff. We usually buy, like I said, we usually buy 1 or 2 at a time, depending on how much we need. Another thing that you need to look at is the quality of your soldering iron, especially the tips, and also the temperature of it. Now, a lot of soldering irons are rated in watts, which is the amount of heat in it, and the one that we use is a digital temperature control, where you can actually put it to a physical temperature number, and I like that better than relying on the wattage, whatever wattage rating it is. And all the places that I've ever worked at in the last 20 plus years of doing this repair type business and working on things for different places, the temperature that we always set our irons at was between 750 and 800 degrees Fahrenheit. That's kind of the average range that you need to have them set at. That way it's hot enough to melt the solder, but not too hot, sort of thing. But it's between 725 and 800 degrees. Seems to be a good range to be at. And most of those cheaper little single irons, solder irons that you get like at Home Depot, Walmart, whatever, they're like 20, 30 watts. I don't know what they get up to, but they're not. they're not the greatest by any means, and the tips are kind of junk. So there's a good brand of solder station that we used to use, but I didn't use it in a while. It's made by Hakko or Hakko, however you pronounce it, Hakko. That's a really good brand. Expensive. They're a Japanese company. Really good equipment. We haven't used theirs in a while. We have one, but the iron messed up, and I just haven't fixed the iron yet. So we bought it's like $100 and some odd for their, I think it's FX77D. I think it's the model. They're like $125 for both the iron and a little power supply that runs the iron. But the iron that we use is a cheaper one. I don't know what's costs like $45 for the thing. It comes with the iron, the power station that powers it all up, and a little roll of solder, which that solder on that little kit is junk. We threw it away. It doesn't stick real well. It's a crap mix of metal solder. The nice thing about that iron as well, which here's the iron for it right now. I'm going to get it powered on here. The tips weren't the greatest on it. They lasted a little while, but they would crap out. The nice thing about that is, another little quick thing is you need good tips for your iron. There's a lot of cheap ones out there, and they'll last for a little bit, but they eventually start to break down from being hot and cold. The metal is just not a very good mixed metal, what they make those tips out of. So, nice thing about this cheaper iron that we have, we can make it a lot better, because the Hakko, whatever you pronounce it, those tips will fit on this iron. So we can basically take this cheaper made iron, which this iron we've had for 4 years, and the only thing I've ever had to do was change up this iron. So, it's gone up in price. It was like $30 like 5 years ago. Now it's $45, but everything's gone up in price. But we took the tips off this one, and the Hakko ones, whatever you pronounce it, we had some of those still laying around, and they were the same diameter to go. There's a metal sleeve underneath this metal part here that the tip slides on as you put this back over it, and the same diameter and everything, and it fit right on there. So, and I've had this tip on here for like 8 months, and we solder like every day. So it's a good one. I'll put a link to that one down below as well. So if you're interested in getting a cheaper iron and then you want good tips, I'll put a link to the tips as well down there. Like I said, it's not an affiliation thing unless we can figure out how to do that. We'll get some kind of like 5% kickback or whatever, but I don't know how all that works. We don't do that most times anyways. But all right, so let's get into this desoldering thing. Let me get my camera zoomed in here. Actually, I want to show you something real quick. Now, the circuit board is junk. It's broken. So, but I think it'd be a good show and tell how to desolder. Let me get another circuit board and show you some differences between this is like a single layer board when it comes to solder. See, there's no solder on the top sides of where any of these leads go through. There's no solder on the top side. It's all on the back side, which is nice because you don't have to worry about pulling solder from the back, versus like this circuit board here has solder on the top side. These little spots are solder on the top side as well as the back side. So they can be kind of if you're doing this technique with this stuff, it's a royal pain in the neck. And even with a solder sucker, the little manual ones, those have a hard time getting solder to pull all the way through from the top side and the back side. The best way to do that is to get a desolder pump, electric one, and it is a built-in vacuum pump, and those get nice and hot. And they do a lot better job. But anyways, most people don't get that deep unless you're in the professional business of doing that sort of stuff. So, all right, so we're gonna zoom in here, and also having good solder. And this is the brand that we use. It's made by Kester. It's a mixed metal. I forget the combination of lead and whatever mix, but I don't remember now. But Kester makes a bunch of different diameters. This is pretty standard diameter, not too big, not too small. And I think this is like a 2 pound. I forget how big the roll is, but it's like a 2 pound roll of solder. This is really good solder. And that has a lot to do with the quality of the solder joint, as well as when you're soldering. being able to get the solder to stick and flow and everything like that. Make a good solder joint, because there's some cheap solder out there. I mean, you know, people try to save money, but sometimes it ends up costing them more. So we're going to focus on these two solder joints there. What you do is you take the braid, and what I do is I lay it flat on top of it. Now, this solder iron I have right now is set at 800 degrees right now. And we've also got this, it's little, looks like a SOS pad looking thing, but it's like copper, and it's stuck in there, and you use that to kind of clean the tip off. And so you lay that across there, and I usually lay the iron kind of sideways. If you put it directly on it, it doesn't really work, because if you get sideways, it gets a little more heat surface area on it. Lay it on there, and just watch, see, it just flows right on there. Look at that, just sucked it right. Oh, and see, this piece of braid gets hot, because you're 800 degrees wanting to travel up that line on there. So as it starts to get hot, you know, pull your finger off and then pull it back a little bit. But then when you get, you know, there's still a little bit more on there. So now we're going to move it down a little bit to another spot. Just press up kind of hard against it, and you'll see the solder kind of flow onto it. See? Move up a little bit more, still a little bit more on there. And this is basically done. If you had to, you can go on this back side here and push on it, and you see the solder just pulls right off there. I love this desolder braid. This is probably the best stuff out there. Yeah, it's going to cost you a bit more, but it's a 50-foot roll. And you can get, I think, 25-foot rolls if you needed to. And they got them in bigger widths, I think, than this, but this is pretty standard width, and this works fine for us. So you see, we move it up there to another clear spot. Just pull it right off there. So if we could take these two off here and unscrew, and the little part would pop right off there. Let's go to another spot. Let's do that one right there. And sometimes if you get too much, oops, sorry for hitting the cord, it's plugged into the camera here. If you get too much on there and whatever, you can always take a pair of snips and just cut it right off, and then throw the stuff away. Now you're starting back over fresh again, basically. So lay it across there on the bare spot. Lay the iron, clean the iron off again. A little bit of gunk on there. Lay it on there, and just put the, like I said, lay it sideways. I kind of push hard on it, so it kind of holds the thing there. And see, pulled right off there. A little bit more left. Ow. Kind of hot. There you go. So that one would be good. And there's those two that are all desoldered off there. Now we're going to solder. So what we do is we clean the iron off. Now, the little tip trick thing with these soldering irons, if you're done working with it for the day or the time being, what you could do to help lengthen the life of the tip is first clean it off, get it where it's nice and shiny, get all the crap off there. And also you can take the solder and just put a little layer of it on there. You can see it kind of melts, gets on there real good, and then you just put it back in this little holder, turn it off, and then that solder will help kind of coat that tip and kind of keep it clean. And when you're ready to use it again, once it heats up all the way, you can turn it off. That solder on it does have, like, if you don't use it after a while, I don't know, 10 minutes, however long it is, it goes into like standby. So to get it out of standby, turn it off, turn it back on, and you'll see the temperature go back up again. So what we do when you go to solder, you put solder back on, clean your tip, make sure it's nice and clean, and then you add some solder to, they call that tinning. So you're tinning the tip of your iron. So when you put some solder on there, that actually helps the heat flow between whatever you're touching and the pad itself. So we're going to zoom back in here, and we're going to solder back on there. So whenever you're soldering, you want to touch the pad and then whatever lead is sticking through. You want to touch those at the same time because you're wanting the solder to flow onto those. And you want to put it on the back side because you want the solder will flow towards the heat. So you put it on the back side, you touch both the pad and the piece that you want to solder on, and you just add some solder there. And you'll just kind of see it flow on there. And once you get on there, just pull away. And you got to give it a minute, or not a minute, just a few seconds to kind of cool off and harden up, because there for a moment it's going to be kind of liquidy. And then we'll do the second side here. We'll touch both the lead coming through and the pad at the same time. And I always kind of, you can go straight down, but I like getting kind of at an angle a little bit more, kind of so that way you get a little more surface area touching it. Just add a little bit, you kind of see it flow on there. Once you see it all covered up, it's good. And you can go back and clean all this. Has got like this, I think it has like some flux built into it, or rosin, whatever it is. So it's kind of a dirty solder, or not dirty solder, but it leaves a residue. So if you really picky about that, you can go off and wipe it off there if you want. And we'll do the last one over here. Clean the iron off the tip. And we'll add a little solder to it. And then we'll find the side there. We can test the back side of it, the lead and the pad at the same time. I'll solder to it, take it away. Then you want to make sure that the whole pad is covered. I mean, you don't want to put too much on there, but you want to put enough that it covers the whole thing. You can see over here, this one's not like, it's covered, but it's not like overly blobbed on there, you know. So you got to be a little careful, you know. It's on there, nice little pyramid shape kind of to it. So that's some techniques of how to, you know, remove solder and solder back on it. But the key things is to have good solder, have a good iron with a good tip, a good quality iron. Use this stuff or a solder sucker or a desoldering pump. Yeah, because you can get those on Amazon pretty cheap. We'll put a couple links down there for both the solder, the desoldering braid that we use, the soldering iron that we use, and the tips that we put on that iron. So, and so that's one way to save a bunch of money. Get a kind of a halfway cheaper iron, put some good quality tips on there, and then you'll be good to go for a while. I think the tips that we'll put in there, I think it's gonna come with I think it's a kit. It comes with like 7 different tips or whatever it is. They got, you know, fine point, chisel point, wide point, really fine point, stuff like that. The one that we use is, I don't know, it's about the size of a number 2 pencil, maybe a little wider than that. It's not real wide, but it's not super narrow, super small fine point. I like the real fine point ones. This depends on the kind of work you're doing, because if you push down too hard and when they're real hot, they start to bend on you, and over time they'll break on you. The tips will break on you. And so that's why I use a little bit wider one. It's a little thicker metal, so it's a little stouter. So that's why we use that one. But those tips, if you don't solder that much, you just solder here and there for hobby stuff, those tips will last a long time, probably years. And so we use this solder station. We've had it for like 4 or 5 years. It's actually, we got 2 of them. One for me, one my dad uses another one just like it. And he hadn't had his quite as long as me. But I've had mine for 4 or 5 years. I think he's had it for 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it is. Besides the tips being changed out every so often, haven't had to look at a problem with it, and it does a good job. So, well, that's a little tidbit information. You'd like to see other little videos of soldering or how to or whatever, leave me a comment down below, and maybe if we have time, maybe we'll do more videos like this. Mostly we're a repair shop working on electric fence boxes and livestock weigh scales and load bars. So that's our main thing we do. But on the circuit boards that come on units, we try to fix boards if we can. Sometimes they're too far gone, or they don't, and we just have to replace them. So that sometimes we have to be a part swapper. But we like to fix boards when we can, if all possible, because that's what I did for years. So I try to fix boards when I can. And so until next time, see you guys later on. Subscribe to the channel, hit the thumbs up, tell your friends about us if you like. Share the video to somebody that might find this interesting or need some help on how to desolder and solder. But check out those links below. The thing down there is from Amazon, and it will have like the links to everything that we've used here at the shop on fixing these circuit boards and stuff. And until next time, we'll see you guys later on.